In episode number 379 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover the Superman Red Sun trailer.
And CBS All Access has so much confidence in Picard since they have greenlit season 2 already.
And our comic book highlight this week is Doomsday Clock number 12, the finale of this series.
All of this and so much more on today's show.
Hello and welcome to the award-winning Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am the almighty Emperor Kelli.
And I am Rocket Executive Daniel.
You are not.
I am this week.
I'm the executive.
No, you're a Kelli.
But I'm also a Rocket Executive. Of the two of us, who would be a Rocket Executive?
I guess you would be, yeah.
You missed it. You should have gone clearly me because I'm Rocket Executive Daniel. But yes, it would be me.
For those of you new to the show, the way we format it is first we go through some news. We head into our Patreon shoutouts of the week, which are the thank yous to everyone who make the show possible. We head into our comic book review of the week, and then we end it with the Brocat block, which is listener questions and where Kelli and I have been this week.
But our first bit of news is pretty rad. Is that fitting?
I think rad is 80s, isn't it?
Oh, damn it.
I could be wrong.
Anyway, according to The Hollywood Reporter, Paramount will be taking the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers back to its 1990s root with a theatrical reboot.
So according to the report, the way they're making this movie is, quote, a time travel element that brings the kids to the 1990s, and in Back to the Future fashion, they have to find a way to get back to their present, end quote.
I'm here for it.
That's kind of a creative way to do it. I thought they were just going to make one that took place in the 90s and try to make it work, but to have the 90s are so far behind us at this point that you can start making Back to the Future type fucking movies.
They're not. I saw a funny tweet the other day that says, it's funny that 2000 was, or what was it? Oh yeah, it's funny that the 2000s were 20 years ago because so was 1980. That's exactly how I feel.
I hope they over-exaggerate the...
Oh my God, they have to.
It's got to be the jeans with the almost like bell-bottom things, right? Like
I would still wear those if they still made them.
What else was there? The vests in the jean vests?
Yeah, the sideways ponytail with the scrunchie.
Wasn't that 80s?
It was probably also in the 90s.
A lot of those things leaked into the new decades. It's not like people said, all right, now it's the 80s, no more of this clothing.
The real plastic glitter shoes. Yeah. I had some of those. Those were great.
And then also the really long shorts that might well have been jeans. Those need to show up somewhere in there. Do you think we'll see any of the original Rangers make a cameo just like in the last live action?
That would blow my mind. I feel like this is the perfect movie to get them to do that though, because then you're having them feed into their own nostalgia.
And are these kids going to be Rangers in the modern time, go back to the 90s and have two sets of Rangers that fight at that point?
That would be amazing. I don't know.
Kind of like Spider-Verse, right?
Yeah, kind of. I don't know that would happen. I definitely think they're going to be Rangers in this modern time, and the villain's going to be like, I'll send you to the past, and send them back there. It would be interesting if their costumes change when they go in the past so that it fits that era too. I don't even know.
So it would be like the Rangers from the 90s when they go back to that era, if there's a costume change is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I do think we're going to get some members of the original cast just to hook in people our age, and then you can have the newer cast, whoever those are, the kids or whatever, show up as the protagonist.
Did we see the bullies in the last one? Did those guys? What if they need to bring them back? They have to bring them back.
They were there the longest out of all the cast members from what I remember.
It would be perfect. They could be like janitors at the school or something.
Why couldn't they make it successfully in the future?
They're going to be janitors at the school. Well, I'm calling it now. One of them is going to be both of them are going to be janitors.
You know what happened to Skull, right?
No.
He became a billionaire. In the show. I don't remember if it was like a relative that he knew or but he went off and he had a good life, and then they made them into decent people by the end of it.
Really?
They kind of always were.
They were just bullies in high school?
Well, if you go back and watch the show, like they're trying to pick on the Rangers, but then the Rangers end up tripping them, so I'm like, the Rangers are really picking on them. I think they're the real bullies. And I know the message is that they're getting back at the bullies, but they're so terrible at bullying that anyone that makes fun of them is in turn actually bullying Bulk and Skull. And so go back and watch those cartoons. They're on Netflix. Not cartoons, but the shows are on Netflix, and you can see and have a new perspective as an adult of like, you know what? Bulk and Skull were the victims here. This is true. Go back and watch them. They say some awful shit to them.
I feel like this is the perfect way to bring back all the original fans who maybe saw the last movie and weren't sold on it. And then now you hear this and you're like, damn it, now it's the I gotta go. It's the 90s.
I know a lot of the fans of that last reboot are pretty upset about this because they ended it with them introducing Tommy in that new continuity, and they tried to make them more blockbustery, superhero-y kind of Power Rangers with the updated costumes and more modernized ones. So it sounds like they're going back to something a little bit more traditional with this new one. So I know they're not happy with it because there could have been more out of that series.
Mm-hmm. Who knows? Maybe we could potentially get that one back. Like you have this one, they go back in the 90s, they go back to the future, bam, there's these other Rangers. Now what's going to happen?
That'd be cool. We'll see.
Another show from our childhood that we loved and have watched many more times than the Power Rangers. Star Trek. Picard. As we said in the very beginning, CBS All Access has already given us a season 2.
So Picard, of course, being a spin-off of what we actually watched as kids, Star Trek The Next Generation. That's how much confidence they have in this team, in the story, in the characters. Season 1 comes out on January 23rd of next year on CBS All Access. It's not too uncommon now where you see them green light a new season ahead of the season 1 debut. They did it with Titans, I believe, and there's a couple of other streaming shows that they'll do it for. And I think that says a lot to the consumer and the viewers by them going, all right, well, if I'm going to invest in season 1, it's nice knowing that there's going to be more to come.
Right.
So as opposed to like if they told us ahead of time that something like Swamp Thing was definitely not going to get into season 2, you saw those comments online when that was canceled of, well, what's the point of watching season 1 now if they canceled it and there's no season 2? They don't understand that it's about the journey of that first season, but in consumers' minds, they're in for the long haul. So that's what this is doing for them.
This could just be a show about Picard commenting that he left his shoes out, and I would watch it, and I would be there for it.
From the Inner Light.
Yes. Love that. I'm so excited. Do you think it's already worthy of a season 2?
From the little bit I've seen, probably. I mean, I have to actually sit down and watch it. Obviously, it hasn't come out yet, and we're not going to get CBS All Access for Picard. But once it does come out on Blu-ray, DVD, or if the whole season comes out digitally, that's the way I'm going to watch it, save myself the CBS All Access money and watch it that way. Yes, I'm not really contributing to those numbers right away, but by buying the season, I'm at least catching up in that way and also supporting them on the back end. So until I see season 2, then I'll really be excited for it. But I do like that we're getting a lot of the original cast members and not just Sir Patrick Stewart.
But he could carry it on his own.
Oh, easily. Very easily.
That's not all the Star Trek news that we have, though. According to an investor call, Viacom CBS CEO Bob Bakish revealed that there are plans for 2 Star Trek movies.
Previous reports stated that the 2 movies would be directed by J.J. Abrams and Quentin Tarantino, respectively.
Tarantino?
You didn't hear about that?
No.
I think we had talked about it here on the show months ago. But people were saying, oh, we're going to get a Star Trek now that's going to be tits and drugs and violence and blood and R-rated.
Yeah.
As if that's all Tarantino could do.
As if he wouldn't try to fit in with the world that's been created.
Exactly. So that's what we knew before. J.J. Abrams obviously went and played some more with Star Wars, and now it seems like he's coming back to Star Trek.
However, Tarantino may not be as sold on this as I am for him to be on it.
He had a quote here, I think I'm steering away from Star Trek, but I haven't had an official conversation with those guys yet. And this was in an interview with Consequence of Sound. In a strange way, it seems like this movie, Hollywood, would be my last. So I've kind of taken the pressure off myself to make that last big voila kind of statement, end quote.
So he makes a good movie and then he's just like, oh, I'm done. Made a great movie.
Has he ever done anything based on an existing property like this, or has everything been original?
I think it's all been original. I mean, obviously Hollywood, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is based off of a true story to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that he's ever done anything based off another franchise.
I hope he does take a stab at Star Trek. I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is my favorite movie of this year. Really enjoyed it. He's an amazing filmmaker, so I'd like to see what he does with these characters that he doesn't have full control over.
Mm-hmm.
Either he's going to clash with the studio back and forth, or he'll challenge himself within those confines and make something really special. And that's something that I obviously have to watch. If you're going to have anyone huge like that, Tarantino, you obviously let him do what he wants. If he wants to make a fucking bloody Star Trek, so be it. But I don't think that's going to be what he's going to aim for since he is a fan of Star Trek.
Right. I think it's really going to boil down. I know he says, oh, I'm probably retired, but this interview was probably just off the heels of that movie,
Mm-hmm.
which, as we know, he recorded a lot more than what we actually saw. And that was a long-ass movie. So that man was probably tired. However, it's really going to depend. He could go home tonight and sleep on it and wake up with a great idea and say, yeah, this is what I want to run with. Or they're going to come to him with a script and say, here's what we think. And he might fall in love and then potentially go with it. So I think there's a pretty strong possibility we'll get a Star Trek movie out of him.
So the possibility of R-rated movies, here we have one that I wasn't expecting. I kind of expected a PG-13 to hit this one. But Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn has received an R rating by the Motion Picture Association of America.
This, of course, makes it the third DC superhero film to receive an R rating. So, of course, most recently we had Joker, and before that, Watchmen.
Do you think that the success of Joker and the Harley Quinn animated show had any influence on them going with the R rating on this?
100%.
Were the executives that easily fooled into, and I think the answer is yes. If you're explaining it to these people who don't really, they just want to see the money, they want to see the bottom line, but you tell them, we just came off of Joker, made over $1 billion, and it cost us next to nothing. This is the Joker's girlfriend. Make that R-rated as well. And they're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's also going to make $1 billion. Go make it happen. Make us our money.
It's not going to make $1 billion. Okay, let's be very real about that. I'm not, as much as I love Harley Quinn, I'm not disillusioned to think that this is going to make Joker money.
What are we going to see as far as the R rating? Are we going to get a ton of violence? Are we going to get a ton of language? Is it going to be basically the Harley Quinn cartoon in live action?
Yeah, but not as funny as the Harley Quinn cartoon.
Right.
That talking plant guy, I don't even know his name, but he cracks me up. So yes, definitely a lot of violence, a lot of language, I'm sure, especially with the strong female cast that they have, the particular characters that they are. I'm sure that we will hear a lot of that. I really hope that by them going with this rating, it's really what they think is best for the movie, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you always hope for. So I would really hope that those things that they're putting in there are necessary for the storyline and that they're not alienating a lot of their audience, because realistically, probably a lot of teenagers, younger teens would go to this, and now they don't have that option.
So with the movie coming out February 7th of 2020, so we're looking just months away from seeing this movie. There were some reported reshoots from the director of John Wick that had worked on Birds of Prey. Do you think any part of that was Joker just made $1 billion? Let's make it a little bit more raunchy. Let's get some R rating material in there since we know that it can work. Do you think any part of that was a part of the reshoot? I
really hope not, because that's, again, doing the same thing of, well, this is too dark, let's reshoot it so it's not as dark. Right? You're then going away from the original whole entire piece that you had and saying, well, let's just beef it up a little bit and we'll make it fit and we'll make it work. So I really hope that that's not what it was. I hope they just genuinely needed more reshoots.
And I have to ask that question and wonder, because Warner Brothers now has this history of panicking or reading the wrong signals and course correcting, quote unquote, so that these movies supposedly go in the direction of let's make it more successful and let's make more money. And now we know that Warner Brothers aren't the only ones. They've just kind of been the ones that have affected us personally as fans the most. But we're seeing it with Disney with the last Star Wars movie where there was a lot of course correction there. So they are not afraid to not only lighten up movies, but even potentially darken them up. And I think if that's the case, we'll know next year how much of that was tampered with. It always seems to come out.
The thing that I'm concerned about is if they did go this course to darken it up and it doesn't make the numbers that they're trying to see, that they'll again overcorrect and say, well, this is obviously not what the market wants.
No R-rated movies.
Right.
It's going to be weird. Yeah, they always end up going one side of the pendulum or completely the other side. It's very rarely a healthy balance.
As businesses typically do.
Another DC property coming right up, and it's one that I voted for as part of the Warner Brothers A-list program of which comic book do you want to see adapted into a cartoon or home video release. And I voted for Batman Hush, but there was a section there of write in your own answer, and I put in Superman Red Sun. Months later, that showed up in the options. I was like, fuck, Superman Red Sun only. That's the only one I voted for. And we know that we were then getting Superman Red Sun, the cartoon. Well, we have the first full official trailer to the cartoon of one of my favorite comic books of all time.
Now I save the world.
So you've wanted it. You've seen the trailer. What were your thoughts watching the story that you love so much now? Partially, I mean, trailer size, right? Come to life.
I'm still nervous because the DC animated movies for the last couple of years have suffered, in my opinion. I know there's that thought of, and a lot of these fans of, they can do cartoons good and they can't do live action right. And I think it was the opposite for a while there. And the last couple of cartoons we watched haven't been great. Batman Hush we were disappointed with. Batman TMNT I was disappointed with, unfortunately. So when you take my favorite comic book, my favorite Superman story, and you make it into a cartoon, but then you keep the same, or you keep the same character styles, and I'm sure they did it because it's cheaper, as the current run of DC films, instead of trying to make it look like the comic book style that they drew as they used to do, like the early cartoons, like The Dark Knight Returns. They tried to make it look like a Frank Miller book, like one of the All-Star Superman, same exact thing. They tried to make it look like the cartoon as much as feasible, or as the comic as much as they could, while still keeping the cost down. But for this, it looks like it's once again that same style of that new DC New 52 cartoon that they've been doing, that continuity type of thing. And I've seen bits in there that are like, all right, that's from the comic book. I recognize that scene. I recognize the Green Lanterns, Batman and Superman fighting, Wonder Woman. And then there's a couple scenes that I don't quite remember, and they're not as iconic as what we got in the comic books. What I liked in the book is that it's the inverse of Superman in a way, because you're seeing him still be that representative of his people. He's still at his core Superman. He's still Clark Kent, even though he is a Superman that's raised in Soviet Russia. To anyone that isn't familiar with the story, it's that the ship from Krypton leaves a little bit later.
12 hours later.
Than it's supposed to. So instead of landing in the U.S., Superman ends up landing in Russia, and he ends up being raised there. So it's kind of the question of, are you a product of your society, or is it biology?
Nature versus nurture.
Right. And that kind of answers that question, but it does it in an amazing way. It tells this wonderful story. It explores so many aspects of who Superman is and turns it on its head. Lex Luthor, an American, is still trying to stop Superman for patriotic reasons. It's an amazing comic book. It's absolutely stunning. It should be in every single person's collection. I don't care if you like Superman, like superheroes, like DC. It doesn't matter. That's one book that's an amazing story, period. So because it's that strong and that strong a property, and the DC animated films have been faltering as of late, I am nervous as hell. I don't have the confidence yet to say that this is guaranteed to be a successful adaptation for me as a reader, but I am still buying it day one because I need to support Superman Red Son. I need to watch it.
And you voted for it. So.
And I fucking voted for it.
So you might as well. They're not going to be like, oh, well, you voted and you didn't even buy it.
Exactly. We made this happen. Like, you're not buying it now? It's like the fucking Sonic fans that wanted the redesign.
Right.
Well, I wasn't going to watch it, though, because the plot looked shitty, but at least they changed it. Ugh. You know, those kind of fucking people.
Right. I'm excited for it. I really, honestly... 99.9% don't believe that it's going to live up to the comic for you. Again, because it's one of your favorite stories, right? Your favorite Superman story, and you've read it so many times and enjoy it so much. And I think they're going to change just enough that it's going to be unsatisfying for you.
And I don't mind changes if they end up improving what the original work is. For All-Star Superman, if this had come out right around that same era as The Dark Knight Returns All-Star Superman, I would have been like, this could be better than the fucking comic. Because All-Star Superman is way better than the comic in the cartoon form. They cut out sections and pages and side stories, and then they changed the interaction between Superman and Lex, where in the comic, he knocks out Lex after he says, Lex is pleading with Superman. I could have saved the world, Superman, because of you. Now that won't happen. And this is after he destroys the formula that makes Lex see everything that Superman sees the world as it operates and it works. And that's when Superman tells Lex, he knocks him out in the comic, and Lex is fucking on the ground. And Superman says, Lex, if you wanted to, you could have many years ago. And that's where it ends. In the cartoon, he doesn't touch him at all. And he tells him to his face as Lex is on his knees, Lex, if you really wanted to, you could have saved the world years ago. And Lex says, you're right, as he's crying. And that's a much better change than the comic. It's Lex learning that he was wrong all these years, that he was so focused on Superman and not saving the world. So his intentions were never to save the world. It was to prove to himself that he is better than an alien. And that's the kind of shit that you can do. But I don't think we're in that era right now of DC animated cartoons, unfortunately, at least for the movies.
Right. I agree. We'll see. Like you said, we're going to be there day one. We're going to watch it, purchase it, and hopefully it lives up to everything that we know that it could, especially with such a great influence as that comic book.
One thing I do want to see this change in Superman, because at the beginning of the comic book, as he's becoming a symbol for his people in Russia, it does look like the Superman that we understand and know. By the end of the comic, and I understand that there was an artist change, but I do think that there was still an intention to make Superman look older, and you can see it even in the way the hair looks and all the wrinkles in his face. He looks more menacing, and he looks bigger, and he looks bulkier, and he looks like he's made like the Man of fucking steel, right? Like he's made out of fucking stone, like he's been hardened by this communism and by this world and by everything. And so by the end of the cartoon, I do want that to change as well. I don't want them to also keep the same character design, because that's also representative of the interchange that he goes through by the end of the comic, by putting a stop to any opposing forces. And they better not change the ending, because the ending is everything. It takes you right back to the start of it all in such an awesome way. If they instead try to tie this into the DC animated universe like they have everything else, I will be livid. I don't care if it means we get more Red Son Superman.
Right.
I want it to just represent the story. Don't worry about tying it into anything else.
I hope not. I think they'd be so incredibly stupid to try and tie it all in together.
The Superman casting for Red Son include Jason Isaacs, who played Lucius Malfoy in Harry Potter. He also played Sinestro in Green Lantern Emerald Knights.
It was so weird hearing him with a Russian accent, though. And I know that it shouldn't have been, but when I read it, I never read him with a Russian accent. And I know that that's just stupid of me. But he was still Superman in my mind.
I'm just reminded of Bart Simpson when he puts on the mustache. Kiss me or I'll kill you. Old school Simpsons fans will get that one. I loved it. And you didn't get to hear Batman. I did look up the voice casting. He's played Batman before. It's not Kevin Conroy, but I assume that he should also have. I
would assume not, because you're like, it's someone who played, but not Kevin. Like, if it was Kevin Conroy, you would have been like,
Batman himself.
Someone who, Kevin Conroy. Like, no.
Do you think he could pull off a Russian accent?
Yes.
As Batman?
Kevin Conroy can pull off live action Batman. He can
That's
do
true.
anything.
So I'm not. We didn't get to hear Wonder Woman or Superman or anyone else that I remember. Maybe you got a little bit of Lex. The trailer was great though. The presentation of that 4K case. I don't know if you saw it, but it's inspired by the cover of the trade paperback, the new printings of it. So I think it's neat to see kind of that Russian flag influence in there, but it comes straight out of the book. We were just listening to Word Balloon in the car, and John had Mark Miller on, and he asked him if he had any influence over the movie that they adapted for his work, and he said no, because he technically is an employee of Netflix now, so he can't be messing around with any of the properties that they're free to do whatever they want with, and that's what he said on there. But even if they wanted to consult him, he's not allowed to, unfortunately.
Gotcha. Interesting.
I'll be curious to see what he thinks of it. I know he didn't care about Civil War from the Marvel's adaptation, Captain America 3, but hopefully they pull it off. Again, I'll buy it regardless. They'll have my money. The movie comes out on March 17th, 2020, and it is coming out on 4K and Blu-ray.
Moving on over to the print side of comic books, The Hollywood Reporter announced that two 1980s giants will be colliding next year with IDW and Dark Horse.
We're getting Transformers versus Terminators.
What? What?
This is crazy enough to work, Kelly.
My brain hurts.
I
mean,
wait.
The 1980s were just 20 years ago, so.
And it's a bunch of robots fighting.
I know, but
they're both in disguise.
But I can't breathe. Your face, you were so excited.
It was an epiphany.
I'm already suffering from breathing issues, and you're going to do this to me. They are both in disguise.
It's going to be great. You better see.
But I just feel like the Transformers are so campy, and the Terminators are so deadly.
Right.
Like, I don't see the Transformers as deadly at all. Even the Negatrons or whatever they're called.
This does look to be the Transformers from the current run of the comics, though.
Oh, okay.
So it's not quite the cartoon.
Okay. I'll believe you that they're better, I guess.
I don't think we're going to get him, but I need Schwarzenegger in here. I need him to be riding on Optimus Prime in his car form, and then you see him shotgunning behind him at fucking Megatron.
I mean, that would be cool, but hear me out, okay? What if, what's his name with his hook arms is running and then sticks his hooks into the car, but the car is a transformer.
And then it transforms,
yes,
and then it gets him off him. That'd be cool. There's going to be so many. There's a lot of cool moments they can do here. I don't know what the fucking plot is, though. How do you put those two properties together? I get they're both 80s properties, but as you mentioned, one's a rated R property and the other one's for kids.
I guess they'll just both be in disguise. Maybe it's an elaborate game of hide and seek. Like, who can find the other guy?
And one's a Japanese property, and the other one, it's going to be interesting to see what they...
My brain hurts. Do you think that all the Transformers, like including the Negatrons, what's his name? Is it Negatron?
Are you talking about Optimus Prime and Megatron?
Whatever, the bad guy.
Yeah, Megatron.
Negatron sounds more evil. Do you think that they'll team up together to stop the Transformers? I mean, the Terminators? The whatevers?
So from
Schwarzeneggers?
From just looking at the covers, you see Negatron looking down, smiling at the Terminators as
he smiles?
Yeah, he's like, and because I guess he's working with the Terminators to stop the
Transformers.
I should know this. They're not the Transformers though. It's the Decepticons and the
Decepticons.
Autobots is what it is.
Oh, yeah, because he says, Autobots, roll out.
Right. Autobots, transform.
What was his name? Larry, I've transformed. I don't know. What was that kid's name from Rick and Morty? Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah, Rick and Morty. Yeah, he fucking transforms into everything, too. But Transformers versus Terminators is going to be a 4-issue miniseries.
I mean, how much more can you do with it?
And it'll launch in March. I hope it's fucking amazing. I hope it ends up winning.
I hope all our laughter is just like they shit on us with our laughter because they're so great. I hope it wins an Eisner.
That's exactly it. It needs to. And people can laugh and be like, no, this is really fucking amazing. And then they make an animated adaptation 10 years from now.
Can they make a live action movie 10 years from now?
I'm trying to think of who owns those. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know who owns. Are they both Paramount?
I feel like it's just floating in space right now. Like Transformers are just out there. Nobody cares right now.
I'll be subbing to it, and maybe we'll review issue 1 here on the show.
I think we should give our thoughts on these robots in disguise.
Let's head into our Patreon shout-outs, our thank yous to everyone who make the show possible.
This week we have 2 shout-outs. The first one goes out to Julian, whose Twitter handle is at Kage023 or at Lazy Gaming Guys.
Julian enjoyed watching this year's Video Game Awards.
Ooh.
And if you scroll down on his Twitter at Kage023, you can see his play-by-play on all of the different announcements and the outcomes. It's kind of however you feel about the Video Game Awards. The early ones were really shitty, but I heard they've gotten way better over the years. Mm-hmm. And it's also an excuse for publishers to announce brand new games, brand new hardware. So you can check out an actual Let's Play streamer, friend of the show, Julian, through his Twitter.
And our next shout out goes out to Christian, whose Instagram is at @A_man_defeated.
Christian showed off his Zack Snyder DCEU Tree of Life shirt with the caption, quote, "Men are still good. #release the Snyder Cut."
Release that Snyder Cut.
Christian representing the Snyder Cut movement. Thank you so much, Christian and Julian, for your Patreon support this month.
If you too would like your shout out every single month for as little as $1 a month, that's just 25 cents an episode, way less than a cup of coffee, you too could get your shout out.
And don't forget to join our Discord lounge. You can find the link at thereasonsimbroke.com or on today's episode. It's essentially an ongoing live chat with a bunch of Brokehead Core members and other content creators.
And now we can move into our comic book highlight, which is a book we have been waiting for the conclusion for since the dawn of time.
Our comic book highlight this week is Doomsday Clock number 12. As Papa Kelly mentioned, it is the finale.
This is written by Jeff Johns with art by Gary Frank, and the colorist is Brad Anderson.
A little footnote before we go into the review of Doomsday Clock 12. According to an interview with Jeff Johns on Newsarama, the full 12-issue arc is the story they had set out to tell from the beginning of the run. How true that is, I'm not too sure. I haven't asked our friend Jeff exactly what the original scripts were, or if these were the original scripts. There were obviously a lot of delays on Doomsday Clock, which was for many months my favorite comic book currently out there, and it very strong for many issues. There were a few where it took its time in telling and exploring these new characters' backstories, which I really appreciated. But it seems like with his demotion from DC Comics, because of what happened in the DCEU and the direction of the comics going in a whole different way, kind of away from the Watchmen and the Flash Rebirth era type of creation that was DC Rebirth, it seems like there might have been some changes by the end of the story to not have it be the giant next rebirth of the DC universe that they had originally planned. It does end in a way that leaves the door open for a lot of new characters and ends the story for a few, but it's not the universe changing comic book that we were initially thinking or the way that they were promoting it from the beginning.
This is, of course, a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't read it yet, you're waiting to read it, you can skip ahead a few minutes, but essentially we get, of course, the final wrap-up, that moment where Dr. Manhattan has reached the point where he can't see past, where Superman's about to punch him in the face, and we hit that moment, and then we move forward from there, and it moves forward extremely quickly at that point.
Yeah, and this is the issue where the two ideals clash together of cynicism versus optimism. It's hope versus, I don't even know what you call it, like
Dr.
this dread.
Manhattan.
Yeah, Dr. Manhattan.
Blue
really.
Dingles.
From the end of Watchmen, he left that world for a less complicated one, and that's where he arrived at the DC universe and influenced this world. He created life you saw that in the Before Watchmen series, which that particular issue, I think it was issue 3, went up in value because it's suspected that that's when he then arrived in the DC universe. So there's a lot of tinkering that he did with the DC universe and with the multiverse as well. He can see everything. He's essentially God, just like he was in Watchmen. But his main focus and his main draw in this universe is Superman. And it seems like it's been that since the beginning, where he says, why can't I see past this point of time? Why is it that when this Superman and I clash, do I end up destroying all of reality and all the universes, or does he end up destroying me? And this is kind of where you're waiting and leading and going into as these clashes happen, and Superman is essentially losing, but he's still fighting to save people. He's still fighting to try to get Dr. Manhattan to help him against these villains. And that's when Manhattan reveals to him, it's because of me that your parents are dead. It's because of me that all of this stuff is happening. I'm the one who caused this rebirth to happen. And I thought that moment of Superman winding back and throwing the punch, and that's when Dr. Manhattan was like, all right, this is it. This is when I find out what happens. And he punches a villain behind Manhattan. Superman's not concerned. And whether or not I don't know if it's an act of forgiveness or it doesn't matter what you did. The time is now and we need to live in the moment. And I think that might be the message, because at the end of it, Manhattan learns stop and smell the flowers. This is a character that exists at all times, at all moments. And for him to learn that lesson from Superman, I think that was the point of the comic where it's like, shit, I did not see that being the conclusion or the clash between the two characters. Superman is that hope for Manhattan. He's the inspiration for Manhattan after that point.
Right. I 100% didn't expect that. I thought they were going to fight and something else would happen, right? But yes, definitely have that moment of you need to live in the moment. Essentially, it all matters, right? You're sitting here saying, oh, I live in all these times, none of it matters. But it really does. It matters to the people who are here in those moments. And obviously that's when you see the change, right? Dr. Manhattan goes and he kind of restores the DC universe to what it was. We got all these characters that come back out of everywhere. You have Superman's parents come back. All these different things happen. And then he ultimately decides, well, now I need to go back to my world and help in whatever way that I can and do the same.
And he takes the Watchmen characters and he put, like, for a comedian, for example, I thought it was actually Lex Luthor that sends him back, but I thought that was kind of a cruel fate for someone like comedian. I'm like, oh, like, I know he's a piece of shit, but he's endearing.
That was funny. Yeah. So essentially, if you've forgotten or haven't kept up, in Watchmen, the comedian gets pushed out of the building, pushed out of the window.
Kicked out of the building. He gets thrown out.
Yeah,
that's right.
Thrown out of the window, falling to his death. Well, in this, he gets pulled from that into the DC universe and obviously doesn't die because now he's not falling from the top of the building. He got pulled out of that. And so then he gets sent back to that point that he came from. So then he's like, oh, shit. Like, he just dies anyway.
It's all a joke, right?
Yep, all a joke.
There's that moment of inspiration as well that Batman and Alfred play for Rorschach. In telling and essentially teaching him that he is Rorschach in spite of him not having, his face, or him learning that he's not really the original Rorschach.
Well, Rorschach says, I'm never putting on the mask again because of what it stands for. And Batman's like, then you show them that it stands for something else.
A lot of hope in the DC universe compared to the Watchmen characters. And that's something that Jeff Johns said, that it's not necessarily that they're all cynics or that they're all negative, but it's just the push and pull between the two when you're telling a story or when you're building these characters. That's what he was saying in the interview. And I like that Manhattan had his mind changed again, because it happened in Watchmen with his girlfriend at the time when they were on Mars. And that's when she convinces him to go back to Earth and fix everything. But then Ozymandias' plans go through and he sees, oh, actually Ozymandias was right this whole time. And that's when he gets once again pulled down to, no, I was right originally. I should leave and not be a part of this. And then in this case, Superman is that hope for him, an inspiration of something greater. And Superman ends up being the symbol of the DC universe in essence, because he's the one that exists in all these multiverses.
Right.
That is that anchor to all these worlds. And the main, that's why Manhattan focuses so much on the character. And I think by restoring the DC universe, having them not land in these different time periods, restoring, I guess, the multiverse and all these characters, like you said, he pulls all of that in. And I don't know if he sends them back or if this was Jeff Johns' way of bringing in the Silver Age characters. I don't think that was made clear to me by the end of it. But he ends up, after he finishes fixing the universes, he pulls the child from
Marionette and Mime.
Yes. It was their second or first child.
Their first child.
Which had disappeared in one of the earlier comics, right?
Yeah, so they were incarcerated at the time she had the baby. So, of course, they took the baby away from her, and then the baby disappeared, and nobody knew what happened to it. And so it gets revealed that the reason Dr. Manhattan couldn't see what happened to it is because he's the one who took the baby.
Gotcha. And otherwise, the baby would have ended up who knows where, right? And was that his way of... Because I know he has a deep connection to these two characters. He cares about Mime and Marionette. And he even says, I didn't kill them, or I didn't stop them, or I didn't mess with them because of their son, because I knew
what their son could do.
Right.
I saw what their son was going to do, yeah.
So he ends up raising, I guess, their child up until they're a kid, and he ends up destroying himself in a way by putting himself into their world.
Yeah, so what I really took away from that, and after he sees Superman, he realizes that the biggest difference between the two of them is that Superman was raised with all this love and this understanding and these parents who wanted to teach him the right ways and show him these different things. Whereas Dr. Manhattan's father was so concerned about his future that he refused to let him understand his present. So I think Dr. Manhattan ultimately realized, and it's not really made clear, this is just kind of what I'm pulling from it, was that because he didn't have that influence growing up, ultimately he would probably still stay in that same cycle as we saw, right? His girlfriend pulled him out of it. He went back into it. Superman pulled him out of it. Potentially he's going to go back into that hopelessness, that living in the future rather than the present. So he says in the book that he used all of his powers to restore the earth and to help this child. So we see moments of him raising the child, smiling at him, showing him the same things that Clark's parents showed and taught him. And then in the end, you see the kid with the symbol on his head. So I think ultimately he took all his powers and put it into this child who had been raised much the same way Superman did, who could continue that hope, whereas he knew he couldn't.
That's an amazing breakdown, because now I understand everything. like really understand it on a deeper level. Like I get that this was the character, but this is why it's called Rebirth then, because Manhattan is reborn through this child that he calls Clark because it's inspired by Superman himself. And it's almost as if he sees what he could have been. Right. He could have been like Superman if he had a different upbringing. A different upbringing. And that's something that he sees in Superman, sees that hope, and something he did not have and struggles with. And instead he recreates it through this child, through this rebirth. And now it's almost as if he recreated his own past or himself, although it's not him anymore, but it's still like he recreated it and was reborn through this child as well, who I'm assuming has similar powers to Dr. Manhattan, except he lives in the present and not at all times. Right.
I did also love that when he's telling the story of, these different things, the way he's fixing the universe and raising this child and doing all this stuff, he does go back to that moment with Janie, his old girlfriend, who he went in to get the watch for. And he does have that, remembering, okay, it's this, as he does, it's this year, I'm going back in to get the watch. She says, don't worry about it, live in the moment. And then he lives out his life with her, goes through all those moments of what would have been if he hadn't gone back, and sees himself having children with her and growing old and all these things. So that's almost like him letting go of, oh, well, this is what could have happened, but I'm not going to allow myself to feel that because it doesn't matter, right? He lives that out knowing that his ultimate end goal is to pass on what he is to this child and be done.
And he did leave them at Night Owl's home, right? That's what I got. That's what I saw the last home being.
I think so. I was trying to figure out whose home it was because I recognize the last name. Is that Night Owl's last name?
That's what I thought it was. I don't think it was Mime and Marionette. It didn't look like them.
No, it didn't look like them. I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember their original names. I just know Night Owl and Saturn or whatever she was.
Jupiter.
Jupiter. So I would have to go back and look again, but the name was very familiar, and he did show up and say, John said that they were friends and they would know what to do with me.
That makes sense. Then I think it was Night Owl's family. Although they have kids now, this is further in the future, and they would know John. They both knew him really well. So, I don't know what that means for the future of the Watchmen universe. I don't know if they intend on bringing this character back in any way. But if they decide not to, do you think this was a satisfying sequel/end to the Watchmen universe?
Yeah, I thought so, because I felt that it gave a lot of hope for the Watchmen universe. Obviously we got to see it really torn down. We did see that scene of the newspaper guy and the kid, like, they died. We found that out. Sorry, newspaper guy and kid. But I think it just gave a lot of hope for what's going to happen. It did open more doors to potentially have a sequel, right? We got that little girl now with Ozymandias' cat who's like obsessed with him. And so what would that bring about? And then, of course, Owlman and his kid, and now little Clark. So a lot that could still be done. But if they don't continue, then, our minds can run with what could have. But I still think it was pretty satisfying.
When the full trade comes out, I'll be purchasing it. They've been breaking it down in 6 issues as a hardcover. They'll come out with the next 6, and then inevitably they'll do a full hardcover and then a trade. But when they do, it's one that I want to go back and read from beginning to end, because I feel, and a lot of my subscribers went, okay, now I can read the story, because they hadn't. They wanted to wait because it was so delayed.
Right.
And many of them were like, they were reading it. They got up to issue 3 and they're like, it's been 6 fucking months. I don't remember what happened in issue 1.
Right.
So they're like, I'm just going to buy them all and then read them all when they come out. And one guy was telling me earlier, he's like, when's the trade come out now that the final issue is out? And I told him, well, the second hardcover is coming out in a few months or so. And then they'll eventually put them all. He's like, I'll just dig up my comics.
Yeah, I feel that way 100% though, because there was a lot reading through this that I had to stop and pause and say, okay, what happened before? What was going on before? I will say I was definitely that meme of the lady with all the numbers though. When they were at the end, they're like, okay, the year is 2020 and this is happening, and 2025 and this is happening. And I'm like, is this the future of DC Comics? Do you guys have the next 40 years planned out?
Is this the issue where Manhattan talks about Superman fighting the Hulk and Thor?
Yes.
So it's insane. Like, Manhattan can also see the Marvel universe is a part of one of the DC multiverses. I guess is what they're saying. That was one of the funnier parts where he's like, he fights the Thor himself and some green behemoth stronger than Doomsday, and I'm like, oh shit,
it's the Hulk and Thor.
Manhattan was there watching it all. It's really cool. I'm really happy with it. I really wasn't expecting this non-confrontation, but. What were we going to expect? Like Manhattan to throw punches against Superman or something?
Right.
I think if it had been handled with less respect, maybe that's what we would have gotten, kind of a more typical type of versus comic book. But since it's Jeff Johns and it's Gary Frank, they handled it very earnestly and handled it as a Watchmen book, more Watchmen book and less a DC book, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I recommend it. If you can get your hands on all of them, read it from beginning to end without all these delays.
So there you go. That is our comic book highlight of the week. Let's head into our final portion of this week's episode. It is the Brocat Block.
This is, of course, what happened with Daniel and I this week. And as always, from our fabulous listener at Cuban Slim, he has sent us a question.
Our friend Bobby asks, quote, what new type of cover incentive would you like to see next from DC? History has been blank, 3D, acetate, and morph. Favorite one so far? Mine, Flash, Batman, Doomsday Clock crossover covers, and all of the acetate covers this past month, end quote.
Very cool. What would you say? You have a better idea of this because, of course, you know what sells.
Based on the pre-orders I've been getting from Marvel, ironically enough, I want to see a series of die-cut covers come back. I think it's the 90s when we last saw the more creative die-cut covers. For example, I think it was Sabretooth or Wolverine, where the slashes were the front of the comic, and then you open it and you get the cover. So I think something like that would be really neat with the DC Universe. We saw it with Marvel on J.J. Abrams' Spider-Man #1 about 3 months ago. That variant did incredibly well. That was a Chip Kid cover, and now he's doing one for Wolverine in very similar fashion. It's the 3 slashes, and it's stylized. Chip Kid, of course, being the artist who designed the Jurassic Park logo, and he did a bunch of the Convergence variants for DC several years ago, which didn't do as well, but I do want to see the DC Universe handled in that die-cut cover version of variants. I think that'd be neat.
You get a bunch of bats going up, and then you flip it open, and it's Batman.
That'd be good.
Oof.
A lot of good ideas, yeah. And obviously the Green Lantern core, you can have a ton of spheres and circles throughout it, revealing the core inside. And, you can get crazy with it. Harley Quinn would be a ton of diamond patterns and maybe some beavers.
Some mallets, baseball bats. Joker, just a bunch of ha-ha-has.
Yes.
Ugh.
Hell yeah.
That'd be
I want
great.
to see this happen now.
Alfred, some cooking utensils.
I'll take it.
Some brooms.
A shotgun?
And a shotgun, sure.
Blew off the Joker's head in that dream of his.
He did. It's pretty great. Yeah, I didn't even know that was an option. I would love to see that. I think that would be really, really cool. Make that happen. I mean, in the past, yeah, like you said, the 3D covers I wasn't ever really a fan of because they just kind of mess with your eyes with the way that they did them. I don't know much about covers. You're just like, this looks cool. And I'm like, yeah.
What do you think of the foil covers? Are you a fan of them?
Yeah. They're cool sometimes, but do I look at them and say I would pay more for this or choose this over? The thing about when you bring home fancy covers is I'm always scared to touch them because my fingers are just greasy. Even if I wash my hands, I just have a lot of oils and it's going to leave little fingerprints and I feel bad.
It sounds like you feel pretty neutral as far as the covers, like nothing crazy otherwise. Are you more about the artists themselves doing the covers, like Dustin Nguyen doing a variant or so?
Yes.
Dustin Nguyen month?
I would love a Dustin Nguyen month. That would be fantastic. Just Dustin Nguyen does all of them. The man has no time, but make him do all the covers.
I love Dustin Nguyen, and I buy his variants and covers, but I'm also, I think, the only one.
Aww.
His just don't move the needle it's because it's watercolor.
Right, but they're so beautiful and intricate.
They're gorgeous. They're beautiful covers, but people I've learned from, years of working at a comic shop is they prefer hyper realistic artwork like Alex Ross than the more stylized stuff like even Jeff Lemire, who writes and draws occasionally.
Right.
Or one of my favorites is he did Silver Surfer, Mike Allred.
Yeah.
That's another one that people do not like. They don't like that kind of style, and I really enjoy it.
It's so and I don't want to say simple because that's not really what it is, but it's not.
It's more old school, like Darwin Cook. And that's another one. I'm like, the Great Darwin Cook is another one that wouldn't move the needle. I'm like, come on, guys. What's going on here?
Beat chance.
Great question, Bobby. Thank you so much for submitting. He's stringing up some weeks of questions.
Yeah,
I'm happy. I love it.
It's wonderful. I have a Brocat question from myself.
All right.
And it's for you. So I don't know why I was thinking of this today. I know why I was thinking of it. We have a customer whose name is Jason. When you hear the name Jason, what do you think?
Heavy rain.
Heavy rain. So every time they call out his name for his drink, Jason, I want to go Jason every time. But then that got me to thinking, right? Now that we're parents, would you play that game differently?
Maybe I would, yeah. And like wasn't there a decision there of shooting someone?
Yeah, so I started thinking of the premise, right? Because it's been years. And the premise is his first kid dies.
Right.
His kid gets lost, he loses track of him, gets hit by a car and dies, and it's his fault. And now his second kid has been kidnapped, and he has to save him by doing all this stuff. So you're already living with that guilt of having lost your first child, and now you're potentially going to lose your second one.
Yeah, we did not have any kids at the time, so I was I probably made more logical decisions as opposed to
you were like, I'm not going to cut off my finger, I'll just figure out what it is. I'm pretty sure that was and then there was another decision of I'll just sleep with this lady right now.
I don't remember
while your kid's missing.
That's right. But that one I failed at because the remote thing, it was like and there were some moments like when you had to rock the baby where it didn't work right. I think you had to do it for me.
Yeah. something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of those moments. It'd be interesting to play it again, but it was stressful.
It was stressful then. I think it'd be even more stressful now that I have a child, because I'd be like, just save him. Just figure it out. He's our kid. Like, save him. What are you doing figuring out these little puzzles? Get the police.
Yeah, that's a interesting question for sure. What else happened with your week otherwise? With the Christmas rush, it's insane on all fronts.
Insanity. Of course, Daniel works retail. I work food and beverage, as we have for our entire careers, right? So I feel like we just pass each other in the night during this time of year. Absolutely insane. Of course, I'm still transitioning, taking over this store. So there's a lot that I'm still working on to try and get them up to par. But at the same time, we don't have staffing. I'm staying late. There's still 2 more work days, and I've probably already put in 50 hours this week. Mm-hmm. So it's just a lot on my plate. But at the same time, I'm living for the future. I'm looking ahead, and I'm seeing 2 weeks from now, these aren't issues. So right now I'm going to be crazy until like Christmas. And then my understanding is Christmas, like everything just dies for me. And it's a nice slow, like every day is a Sunday, up until after the new year. And then everything pretty much mellows out from that point. So that's good to have all that support behind me and the people who understand the business a little bit better and can help me with that. I did, if you haven't heard it in my voice for the entire however long we've been talking, got some weirdo allergies today. So whenever Florida goes from cold, as in 50 degrees or under, and then the next day goes up to 70 degrees, something blooms and it just fucks me up. So my nose has just been a faucet all day, and I've been coughing, and obviously my voice doesn't sound quite as charming as I normally am.
You're sounding more Palpa-ish.
Yes, excellent.
That's Mr. Burns.
You don't fight
You're
the
like,
Palpa.
No, that's Palpa.
Clearly you don't know. Mr. Burns is trying to be Palpa. Clearly. So yeah, that's what's been going on with my week. Just really busy, still trying to crochet this blanket. It's almost done, I think.
The one thing I heard about the allergies, because someone else brought that up, and I was like, I don't know if something is blooming during this period. And someone told me, no, it's because we're getting more wind. So it's moving all the shit around.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
And I don't know, I just took it by this lady's word. So I'm like, all right. It does make sense, though.
Yeah.
Because what would bloom? Like, oh, it got colder, let's bloom. Or it got slightly warmer. I can't think of a plant.
It could happen if you think... It's fucking Florida.
Yeah, it's fucking Florida. These plants would die in 20-degree weather.
Yeah, they sure would. But then they could be like, I'm sleepy, and then it goes to 70 again. It's like, oh, make pollen.
Procreate.
Grow things.
It's like the bees aren't even out yet. Yeah, as you mentioned, retail is insane for us. Although this past Wednesday, if you at all have a subscription at your local comic shop, you knew that this pile was going to be massive. What the publishers ended up doing is, because next week is, and it happens every year, even if it doesn't always land on a Wednesday, but next week, New Comic Book Day is on December 25th, on Christmas Day. So Christmas Eve would be when we normally would get our shipment, but sometimes Christmas ends up landing on a different part of the week. Regardless, what the publishers do every year is they send us 2 weeks worth of books. Now, some of it releases next week. I think it's like 8 titles, though. What the publishers do is they put out most of them the week before Christmas. So that was this last Wednesday. It was basically 2 weeks worth of books, even though we're getting a few titles. We're getting so few titles next week that you're getting 2 weeks worth of books this Wednesday on one day. And that's something that we had to keep reminding our subscribers, because they're like, holy shit, that's a big pile. That's a huge week. Just a heads up, next week it's going to be tiny, though. You're going to have like no books. And I know what's going to happen is next week they're going to come in on Thursday and they're going to say, what? That's it? It's like, yeah, last week was huge, though. So that's what's going to happen. And just so you know, a Brocat Core member, that this coming week is not going to be, you're going to get your break, if that makes any sense. But it's also going to be an opportunity, because this also happens every year, of people trying out something new because they just want to have something to read, because they read all of last week's 2 weeks worth of books. And now they still want to, out of habit, pick up something to read and check it out. So that's when we sell extra trades. A lot of them get like the little Visa gift cards, and they'll spend it on a nice back issue. It was our biggest Wednesday in the store's history this past week. And yeah, it's because of 2 weeks worth, but it's an amazing total for what essentially was a regular new comic book day.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like someone came in and bought 18 statues because it's Christmas. It was a lot of our subscribers coming in on new comic book day, getting their pile of books and going home happy, wishing everyone a happy holidays as they left, and asking when next week's books would be out. It's awesome. It's the routine, it's the grind, but it's on a larger scale.
Mm-hmm.
So Tuesday sucked. Like, it was massive. It was huge, but thankfully the owner came in and helped us out. But my hands were hurting. I mean, you're lifting paper all day, stacks of paper all day, so for over 8 hours. But it was good. The staff got through it all, and this now it's going to be easier next week because it's pulling 8 comics worth, and we're going to knock that out in like 2-3 hours. Everything's basically pulled.
Right.
And selling the shit out of Star Wars now before
before they all watch it.
Yeah, I mean, people are still watching it now, but I'm like, fucking sell it all, because I know mixed reactions have definitely been all around. So I'm like, well, we can sell Star Wars, fucking sell it, because if Star Wars is quote unquote dead, I know it won't be, but where people won't be excited about the next one and won't be buying the merch, then yeah, I want to clear out and sell as much Star Wars as I can while it's at its peak and not reorder any episode 7 through 9 stuff.
The other thing that's going on with me this week, I am now that meme of Tom Hanks from that movie where he crashed on the island. Castaway, where you see him sitting there and the caption is me after I've bought everyone's Christmas presents.
Just like homeless looking?
I'm just poor. I'm just poor sitting on an island with my volleyball friend cooking over an open fire. I'm so poor.
Yeah, you went all out on Christmas.
I did, but we have a lot of great support around us. So I wanted to recognize that. And additionally, I didn't feel that it was right for me as a manager not to get something for my team. And it's not something that my company pays for. It's something that I pay for. But they work really, really hard all year. I work hard too, but those people are in the trenches every single day working hard for me to get a bonus. And to me, that's not fair that I get that and I don't reciprocate and give back to my team. So I did, and obviously my bonus won't be here for 3 more months, but I went ahead and paid it forward in a sense.
Anytime that's happened on my end and it's only happened with local businesses, and I know yours isn't exactly local, but you have more control over your shop and your store. It makes the worker, it tells the workers that we do appreciate the worker, that we're appreciated. Even if they don't constantly remind us of that, it's always nice to, at least, if you're going to at least catch yourself, do it during these big events like the holidays, or in my case, new comic or free comic book day and so on. So I'm sure they'll really appreciate it, and that'll be a good fire under them going into the new year.
Right. I hope so. We'll see. And if not, I mean, great for them. They still got a gift out of it.
But being that this is the show before Christmas, as the holidays end, is there anything you wanted to share as far as holiday memories or anything? We have one more episode before we go into 2020.
That's true.
So we can leave our New Year's, I guess, resolutions or whatever for next week.
Next week. So one of my favorite holiday things, something that it was made even more special this year, is I always like getting a real Christmas tree. Because here in Florida, even next week, I think it's like 77 degrees on Christmas. It's hot. Sometimes it's like 83. So for me, it's never felt like Christmas unless I have that smell of a real tree and not a candle. It's got to be a real tree. So this year we were able to go get one. Did we talk about it last week?
No, I don't think so.
We were able to go get one, and super late in the year. And we took Leo because I wanted Leo to get to experience that too, right? It's super special to me, and I want to share that with him. And the tree tent that we went to, they figured nobody was buying a tree this late. So they had taken down all the lights and it was dark outside. And so we have to go through this tent with all the trees with a little flashlight and just kind of hope that you get a good tree, which we got a really great tree for a really great deal because he was just throwing them all away. So he was like, nah, $35, whatever. But it was so much fun to watch Leo because he thought it was the best game ever. And he's running through this tent with all these trees with a little flashlight, pretending to be scared like he's in some horror movie.
He's in The Shining.
Yeah, and like he's running through and like he'll turn a corner and go, oh, like he was scared of something. And But anyway, now I take him every morning and we go over to the tree and he smells it and like goes, like he does. And so that's probably one of my favorite holiday things. I love that we get to spend the holidays with both sets of our family. It's really special to me that we have that close bond with them and get to spend that time, and they get to spend that time with Leo. So I'm excited. I spent too much, but I think it'll be a great holiday for us.
And we hope that you have a great December, Brokehead Core, regardless of whatever holiday you may or may not celebrate as we head into the new year. And as we already mentioned, next week, we'll talk about the end of year thoughts. Obviously a huge year with the podcast awards that the Brokehead Core members rallied behind for a third time is the charm and made it happen, and tons with the superhero world that ended up happening in 2019. So lots to think about and lots to get through as we continue in our world of food and beverage retail, but our hobbies on the side, the fun stuff that we get to share with you all and celebrate with you every single week.
Thank you once again for tuning in. I am your almighty Emperor Kelli.
And I am Rocket Executive Daniel.
Nope. And Brokehead Core.
All will be well.